Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're reading the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, and we're reading today the Prologue to the Wife of Bath's Tale, translated by Theodore Morrison. Remember, there's many Canterbury Tales on the website. I hope you read them all with Jimmy, and then we're going to analyze them. I want to warn you ahead of time, ladies and gentlemen, this is a long one. This is the prologue, not the actual Wife of Bath's Tale. It's the prologue. Very important. Ready? The prologue to the Wife of Bath's Tale. Quote, experience, though all authority was lacking in the world, confers on me the right to speak of marriage and unfold its woes. If you remember, ladies and gentlemen, there's lots of tales about marriage, and here comes the Wife of Bath talking about her right to talk about marriage. For lords, since I was 12 years old, see the hyphen there? Thanks to eternal God in heaven alive. Hyphen? It's like a little aside. I've married at church door no less than 5 husbands, provided that I can have been so often wed, and all were worthy men. So she's got 5 husbands, so she speaks from experience, right? But I was told indeed, and not long since, that Christ went to a wedding only once at Cana in the land of Galilee. You know your Bible? This is an allusion to what Jesus visited, right? When he went to a wedding. You remember that story? Go back and read it if you don't. And by this example, he instructed me to wed only once. That's what I've heard. Again, consider now what a sharp word besides a well. Jesus, both God and man, spoke in reproving the Samaritan. Quote, this is a quote inside a quote, so this is Jesus. She's quoting Jesus now. 5 husbands thou hast had, end quote. This certainly, he said to her. Back to Jesus saying, and the man that now hath thee is not thy husband, end the quote. If you remember the scene, he's talking to a woman who he asked for water. It's a great, I think we'll do that in the analysis. We're going to analyze that scene from the Bible. It's a very, very good scene. True, he spoke this way, but what he meant is more than I can say, except that I would ask why the 5th man was not a husband to the Samaritan, right? To just how many could she be a wife? I've never heard this number all my life, determined up until now. For round and round scholars may glose and interpret and expound. But plainly this I know without a lie. God told us to increase and multiply. And the noble text I can well understand. My husband, this too I've had well in hand, should leave both father and mother and cleave to me. See, she's quoting another allusion in the Bible, the book of Genesis. When he said, basically, you should leave your father. Actually, Jesus said that in the New Testament. Leave your mother and your father and just cling to your wife. Number God mentioned bigamy. No, nor even octogamy. Why do men talk of it as a sin and scandal then? In other words, why do they talk about sin and scandal if you have more than one husband? Think of that monarch, the wise King Solomon. There she goes after the Bible quotes again. It strikes me that he had more wives than one. To be refreshed, God willing, would please me if I got it half as many times as he. He had a gift. Who's he? What's the pronoun reference? Solomon. And one of God's own giving for all his wives. There isn't a man now living who has the like. By all that I could make out, on the first night, this king had many a bout with each. He was so thoroughly alive. What's that about? What's her reference over here? The king had many a bout with each of his wives. Blessed be God that I have married 5, and always for the money in his chest and for his neither purse I picked the best. In divers schools, ripe with scholarship is made, and various practice in all kinds of trade. Makes perfect workmen, as the world can see. 5 husbands have had turns at schooling me. Welcome to the 6th, whenever I'm faced with yet another. I don't mean to be chaste at all costs. And when a spouse of mine is gone, some other Christian man shall take me on. For then, says the apostle, I'll be free to wed, in God's name, where it pleases me. To marry is no sin, as we can learn from him. Better to marry than to burn, he says. Why should I care what obliquely men heap on Limich and his bigamy? Who's that? You should look that up. Did I have a footnote here yet? No. Abraham was, by all that I can tell, a holy man, and so Jacob was as well. And each of them took more than 2 as brides. She's counting how many times people marry in the Bible. And many another holy man besides, where, may I ask in any period in plain words, can you show Almighty God forbade us marriage? Come on, point it out to me. Or where did he command virginity? The apostle, when he speaks of maidenhood, lays down no law. Who's the apostle? Could be Peter or Paul. This I have understood as well as you, my lords, for it is plain. Now, who's she talking to? Well, she's talking to the other pilgrims. Remember, this is the anonymous narrator narrating what the wife of Bath is talking about in her prologue. This is what she says before her tale, the prologue. Men may advise a woman to abstain from marriage, but mere counsels are not commands. He left it to our judgment where it stands. Had God enjoined us all to maidenhood, then marriage would have been condemned for good. But the truth is, if no seed were ever sown, in what soil could virginity be grown? Paul did not dare, there's Paul, the apostle, Paul, did not dare command a thing at best on which his master left us no behest. But now the prize goes to virginity. Seize it whoever can, and let us see what manner of man shall run best in the race. But not all men receive this form of grace, except where God bestows it by his will. The apostle was a maid, I know, but still, although he wished all men were such as he, it was only counsel toward virginity, it was not a command. To be a wife, he gave his permission. And so it is no blot on my condition and no slander of bigamy upon my state if when my husband dies, I take another mate. A man does virtuously, St. Paul said, to touch no woman, meaning in his bed. For fire and fat are dangerous friends at best. And you know this example should suggest here in this nub, he held virginity superior to wedded frailty. And frailty, I call it, unless a man and woman are both chaste for their whole span. So, no, in other words, they're chaste for the entire marriage. I am not jealous if maidenhood outweighs my marriages. I grant it all the praise. It pleases them, these virgins, fresh flesh and soul, to be immaculate. I won't extol my own condition. In a Lord's household, you know every vessel can't be gold. See how she's referring? You know, she's been married 5 times. She's honoring virgins, but you can't have all vessels that are gold. Some are wood, and they serve their master still. And God calls us variously to do his will. Each has his proper gift of all who live, some this, some that, as it pleases God to give. Virginity is a high and perfect course, and continence is holy. But the source of all perfection, Jesus, never bade each one of us to go and sell all he had and give it to the poor. He did not say that all should follow him this one way. Another Bible reference. If you want to follow Jesus, go and give up everything and follow him. But she's saying each one of us, he did never bait us, each one of us, to do that. He spoke to those who would live perfectly. And by your leave, lords. Who's the lords? The pilgrims? That is not for me. The flower of my best years I find it suits to spend on the acts of marriage and its fruits. So tell me this also. Why, in our creation, were our organs given us for generation? And for what profit were we creatures made? Believe me, not for nothing. Ply his trade of twisting texts who will, and let him urge that they only give us up to purge our urine. Whoa. Say without men we should fail to tell a female rightly from a male. And that's their only object. Say you so? Listen carefully to what she's saying, ladies and gentlemen. She's asking why God gave us, our organs, right? It won't work, as experience will show. Without offense to scholars, I say this, that they were made, who's they? Our organs were made for both these purposes, that we may both be cleansed, and eased through intercourse, where God is not displeased. Why else in books is this opinion met that every man should pay his wife his debt? Tell me, with what a man should hope to pay, unless he put his instrument in play? Ho-ho! Think about this. What does that mean? What is the instrument? We'll analyze this. They were supplied, who's they? Our organs were supplied to us for our purgation. But they were also meant for generation. So in other words, we use them to relieve ourselves and to rejuvenate ourselves, right? To carry on the species. But nonetheless, I do not mean to say that all those who are furnished in this way are bound to go and practice intercourse. The world would then grant chastity no force. Christ was a maid, and yet he was formed a man. And many a saint too, since the world began, and yet they lived in perfect chastity. I'm not as spiteful towards virginity. Let virgins be white bread, of pure of wheat seed. Barley, we wives are called barley. And yet I read in Mark, another one of the apostles who wrote the New Testament, and tell the tale in truth he can, that Christ with barley seed cheered many a man. In the state that God assigned to each of us, I'll persevere. I'm not fastidious. In wifehood, I will use my instrument, my organs, as freely as my Maker that it was lent, borrowed from the Maker. In other words, she's referring to the belief that we're all here at the behest of God. This is only a temporary thing. He's loaning us life. If I hold back with it, God give me sorrow. My husband shall enjoy it night and morrow, whenever it pleases him to pay his debt. Don't forget what that was, right? Down here. A husband, though I'm not been thwarted yet, shall always be my debtor and my slave. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured it out yet by now, this is a liberated woman, even in medieval times. From tribulation he shall never save his flesh, not for as long as I'm his wife. I have the power during all my life over his very body, not him. For so the apostle has instructed me, who bade men love their wives for better or worse. It pleases me from end to end, that verse. Then the pardoner suddenly breaks into her prologue. Before she could go on, he jumps in and cries, "By God and by St. John! Upon this topic you preach nobly, dame. I was about to wed, but now for shame, why should my body pay a price so dear? I'd rather not be married all this year." "Hold on," the wife of Bath says. "I haven't yet begun. You'll drink a keg of this before I'm done, I promise you, and it won't taste like ale. And after I have told you my whole tale on marriage with its fund of tribulation, and I'm the expert of my generation, for I myself, have been the whip. Hyphen. You decide then if you want to sip out of the barrel that I mean to broach. Before you come too close in your approach, think twice. I have examples, more than 10, that the man who won't be warned by other men, to other men a warning he shall be. The man who won't be warned by other men, to other men a warning he shall be. Those are the words we find in Ptolemy. Go on, read it right here in Almagest, right? So she's an educated lady, right? Now, madame, if you're willing, I suggest, said the partner, as you began, continue with your tale and spare no man. Teach us, young men, your practice as our guide. Gladly. He breaks up the tale with a little conversation because he knows he wouldn't be able to listen to this lady, for a long, long time, right? Gladly, if you please, she replied. But first, I ask you, if I speak my mind, that all this company may be well inclined and will not take offense at what I say. I only mean it, after all, in play. So now, sirs, I will get onward with my tale. If I ever hope to drink good wine and ale, I'm speaking the truth. The husbands I have had, 3 of them have been good and 2 were bad. The 3 were kindly men and rich and old, but they were hardly able to uphold the statute which had made them fast to me. You know well what I mean by this, huh? I see. So help me God, I can't help laughing yet, thinking of how at night I made them sweat, and I thought nothing of it on my word. Their land and wealth, they had been by then conferred on me, so I safely could neglect tending their love or showing them respect. These are the 3 older men, right? So well they love me that by God above I hardly set a value on their love. Is this the first prenuptial agreement? A woman who is wise is never done, busily winning love when she has none. But since I had them wholly in my hand, and they had given me their wealth and their land, why task myself to spoil them or to please them, unless for my own profit and my ease? I set them working so that many a night they sang a dirge. A dirge is a lament of the dead, a funeral rite. Na, 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 na. They sang a dirge, so grievous was their plight. They never got the bacon, well I know, offered as prizes to couples at Dunnow, who live a year in peace without repentance. And so well did I rule them that by my law and sentence they gladly bought me fine things from the fair, happy whenever I spoke with a mild air. For God knows I could chide them outrageously. Now judge if I could do it properly. You wives who understand and who are wise, this is the way to throw dust in their eyes. There isn't on earth so bold a man that he could swear false or lie like a woman can. Do you agree with that? I do not urge this course in every case, just when a prudent wife is caught off base. We see this in another tale, which we'll talk about. And then he should swear the parrot's mad, who tattled her indiscretions, and when she's once embattled, should call her maid as a witness by collusion. But listen how I threw them in confusion. Sir Dotard is an old person, especially one who has become physically weak or mental faculties have declined. Sir Dotard, this is how you live, I would say. See the quote inside the quote? So she's talking to one of her older husbands. How can my neighbor's wife be dressed so gay? Well, she carries off the honors everywhere I sit at home. I've nothing fit to wear. What were you doing at my neighbor's house? Is she so handsome? Are you so amorous? What do you whisper to our maid? God bless me. Give up your jokes, you old lecher. They depress me. When I've a harmless friend myself, you balk and scold me like a devil if I walk. For innocent amusement to his house, you drink and then you come home reeling like a souse soaked in liquid. and you sit down on your bench and worse luck and you start preaching, talking a wife who's poor. This is the speech that you regale me with. Costs grievously, and if she's rich and of a good family, it is a constant torment, you decide, to suffer her ill humor and her pride. And if she's fair, you scoundrel, you destroy her by saying that every lecher will enjoy her, for she can't long keep her chastity intact, who is from every side at once attacked. Some want us for our wealth, so you declare. Some for our figure, some because we're fair. Some want a woman who can dance and sing. Some want kindness, some philandering. Some look for hands and arms well tuned and small, and thus by your tale the devil may take us all. Men cannot keep a castle or redoubt longer, you tell me, than it can hold out. Or if a woman's plain, you say that she is one who covets each man she may see. For at him, like a spaniel, she will fly, until she finds some man that she can buy. Down to the lake goes never a goose so gray, but it will have a mate. And I've heard you say it's hard to fasten, this too I've been told, a thing that no man willing to hold. With men, you tell me as you go to bed, and those who hope for heaven should be wed, I hope a wild lightning and thunderstroke will break your wheezied neck. Jimmy put a note here. Wow. You say that smoke and falling timbers and a railing wife drive a man from his house? Lord bless my life. What ails an old man so to make him chide, huh? We cover our vices till the knot is tied. We wives, you say, and then we trot them out? Well, here's a proverb for a doddering lout, or an ox, an ass, you say, a hound or a horse. These we examine as a matter of course. Basins and also bowls before we buy them. We look carefully at spoons and spools and such utensils. First we try them. And so with pots and clothes beyond the denial. But their wives men never make a trial until they're married. And then after that you say, old fool, we put our vices on display. Well, I'm in the thick, if you can forget your duty. And aren't pique is a feeling of irritation. I'm irritated if you forget your duty and aren't forever praising me for beauty, or aren't at all hours doting on my face and calling me fair dame in every place. Or fail to give a feast on my birthday, huh? Or to keep my spirits fresh and make me gay. Or if all proper courtesies aren't paid, my nurse and equally my chambermaid, my father's kin with all his family ties, you say, you old barrel full of lies. Yet just because he has a head of hair like shining gold and squires me everywhere, you have a false suspicion in your heart of Jenkin, our apprentice. For my part, I wouldn't have him if you died tomorrow. But tell me this, or go live in sorrow. That chest of yours, why do you hide the keys away from me? It's my wealth. If you please as much as yours, will you make a fool of me, the mistress of this house? You shall not be my lord of my body and my wealth at once. No, by St. James himself. You must renounce one or the other. If it drives you mad, what do you gain by spying on me? You'd be glad to lock me up, I think, inside your chest. Well, enjoy yourself and go where you think best. You ought to say. That's what you should say to me, she's saying. I won't hear tales of malice. I know you for a faithful wife, Dame Alice. A woman loves no man who keeps close charge of where she goes. We want to be at large. We would, blessed above all other men is he, the wise astrologer Don Ptolemy, who has this proverb in his almagest. Okay, what's that? Almagest? It's up here. This is divided into 13 books, Ptolemy's books. Book 1 gives arguments for spherical cosmos. He was an astrologer. Ptolemy, in subsequent books, explains and predicts motions of the sun, moon, and stars. He was like our first stargazer. So he says, of all wise men, his wisdom is the best. Who does not care who has the world in his hand. Of all wise men, His wisdom is the best, who doesn't care who has the world in his hand. In other words, he doesn't care who's ruling the world. Now, by this proverb, you should understand, since you have plenty, it isn't yours to care or fret how richly other people fare. For by your leave, you old dotard, you are one that can have all you can take when day is done. The man's a niggard to the point of scandal, who will not lend his lamp to light a candle. He's stingy, right? His lamp won't lose, although the candle gain. If you've enough, you ought not to complain. And you say too, if you make ourselves look smart, put on experienced clothes and dress the part, we lay our virtue open to disgrace. And then you try to reinforce your case by saying the words in the apostle's name, quote, in chaste apparel with modesty and shame, so shall you women clothe yourselves, said the apostle. And not in rich coifer and jewelries, pearls and the like, or gold or costly wear. Now both your text and your rubric, I declare, I will not follow, as I would a gnat. You told me once that I was like a cat. For singe her skin and she will stay at home, but if her skin is smooth, the cat will roam. So this is a paraphrase of Timothy 2, lines 9 to 10, which instruct women to adorn themselves in modest apparel. Okay? No dawn but finds her on a neighboring call to show her skin or go off caterwauling, making noise like a cat. If I am to look smart, you mean to say, I'm off to put my finery on display. What do you gain, you old fool, by setting spies? Though you beg Argus with his 100 eyes to be my bodyguard, for all his skill, he'll keep me only by my own free will. Who's Argus? Jimmy gave you a footnote. Many-eyed giant in Greek mythology, known for his perpetual vigilance. He served the goddess Hera as a watchman. His most famous task was guarding Io, a priestess of Hera, whom Zeus had transformed into a heifer. These guys like to fool around when we read Greek mythology together. So Argus had 100 eyes, and she's basically saying, he can only guard me by my own free will. I know enough to blind him as I live. And there are 3 things you also say that give vexation to this world, both south and north. You add that no one can endure the 4th. And of these catastrophes, a hateful wife, you precious wretch, may Christ cut your cut short your life, is always reckoned, as you say, for one. Is this your whole stock of comparison? And why, from all your parables of contempt, can luckless helpmates never be exempt? You also liken woman's love to hell, to barren land where water will not dwell. I've heard you call it an unruly fire. The more it burns, the hotter its desire to burn up everything that burned will be. You say that just as worms destroy a tree, a wife destroys her spouse, as they have found who get themselves in holy wedlock bound. But by these devices, lords, as you perceive, I got my 3 husbands to believe that in their cups they said things of this sort, and all of it was false. But for support, Jenkin both witness, and we did too. These innocents, Lord, what I put them through, God's precious pains. And they had no recourse, for I could bite and whiny like a horse. Though in the wrong, I kept them well annoyed, or often I would have them destroyed, or oftentimes I would have been destroyed. So she kept them annoyed. First to the mill is first to grind his grain. I was always the first one to complain, and so our peace was made, and they gladly bid for terms to settle the things that they never did. She's a conniver, huh, ladies and gentlemen? For wenching, I would scold them out of hand when they were hardly well enough to stand, but this would tickle a man. It would restore him to think that I was so great of fondness for him. I'd vow when darkness came and I stepped to see that the girls with whom he slept, until this pretext I had plenty of mirth. Such wit as this is given us at birth. We're born like this. Lies, tears, needlework the Lord will give in kindness to us women while we live. And thus, in one point I can take pride. I showed myself, in the end, the stronger side. By sleight of strength, I kept them in restraint, and chiefly by continual complaint. I always complained. In bed they met their grief in fullest measure, and there I would scold. I would not do their pleasure. Bed was a place where I would not abide, feeling my husband's arm across my side until he agreed to square accounts and pay. And after that I let him have his way. To every man, therefore, I tell this tale. Win where you're able. All is up for sale. No falcon by an empty hand is lured. For victory their cravings I endured. And even feigned a show of appetite. And yet in old meat I have no delight. It made me always rail at them and chide them. For though the Pope himself sat down beside them, I would not give them peace at their own board. No, on my honor, I paid them word for word. Almighty God, so help me if I write now, I had to make my last will, I can vow, for every word that they said to me were quits. For I so handled the contest by my wits, that they gave up and they took it for the best. Or otherwise we should have had no rest. Like a mad lion, let my husband glare. He finally got the worst of the affair. And then I would say, my dear, you ought to keep in mind how gentle Wilkin looks, our sheep. Come here, my husband, let me kiss your cheek. You should be patient too. You should be meek. Of Job and of his patience, when you prate, your conscience ought to show a cleaner slate. And he would be patient who so well can preach. And if not, then it will fall on me to teach the beauty of a peaceful wedded life. For one of us must give in, man or wife, and since men are more reasonable creatures than women are, it follows that your features ought to exhibit patience. So why do you groan? You want my body yours, and yours alone? Well, take it all. Welcome to every bit. But curse you, Peter, unless you cherish it. Were I inclined to peddle my belle chose, beautiful thing, I could walk out dressed freshly as a rose. But I will keep it for your own sweet tooth. It's your fault that we fight. By gods, that's the truth. This was the way I talked when I had the need. Those are our first three husbands that she's talking about. But now to my fourth husband. I'll proceed. This fourth I married was a roisterer, a person who engages in noisy and unstrained merrymaking. He had a mistress, and my passions were, although I say it strong, and although stubborn and young I was, and pert and feather, if anyone took up his harp to play, how I could dance. I sang as merry as a nightingale, when a sweet wine I drunk my draught. Metellus, the foul swine, Metellus, who is known to have killed his wife, he beat his wife to death with a cudgel because she had drunk too much wine, according to the Tioma. This event is recounted in the writings of Varius, Maximus, Factorum, blah, blah, blah. So this is a reference to a Roman guy beat his wife to death, who beat his spouse until he took her life, there it is, for drinking wine. And if I had ever a wife, he'd never have frightened me away from drinking. But after a drink, Venus gets in my thinking. She gets horny. For just as true as cold engenders hail, a thirsty mouth goes with a thirsty tail. Drinking destroys a woman's last defense, as lechers well know by experience. But Lord Christ, when it all comes back to me, remembering my youth and jollity, it tickles me to the roots. It does me good, down to this very day, that while I could, I took the world my time, and I had my fling. But age, alas, that it poisons everything, has robbed me of my beauty and my pith, Well, let it go, goodbye. The devil with what cannot last. There's only this to tell. The flower's gone. I've only chaff to sell, and I'll contrive to keep a merry cheek. But now on my fourth husband I will speak. My heart was, I could tell you, full of spite, that in another he should find delight. So I paid for this death. I made it good. I furnished him a cross of the same wood, by God and by St. Joseph, in no foul fashion, nor with my flesh. But I put on such a passion, and rendered him so jealous. I made him fry in his own grease for rage. On earth, God knows, I was his purgatory. I only hope his soul is now in glory. God knows it was a sad song that he sung. With the shoe pinched him, sorely was he wrung, only he knew, and by God, the devious system by which outrageously I used to twist him. He died when I came home from Jerusalem. He's buried near the chancel, underneath the beam that holds his cross. His tomb is less ornate than that was King Darius lies in state, and which his paintings of Apelles graced with subtle work. Apelles is one of the most bold and progressive of artists. So she's very schooled, very educated, right? It would have been a waste to bury him lavishly. Farewell, God save his soul and God give him rest. He's in the grave. But now my fifth husband, let me tell. God never let his soul go down to hell, though he, of all five, was my scourge and flay. I feel it on my ribs right now, the scale, and ever shall until my dying day. And yet he was so full of life and gay in bed, and he could so melt me and cajole me, when on my back he had a mind to roll me. What matter if on every bone he beat me? He'd have my love so quickly he could sweeten me. I loved him best. In fact, for as you can see, his love was more arduous prize for me. We women, if I'm not telling a lie, are quaint in this regard. We put in our eye a thing that we cannot easily obtain. All day we're going to cry out and complain, forbid a thing, and we want it bitterly. But urge it on us, we turn and flee. We cherish what we hope that men will buy. We cautiously or suspiciously do something, what we hope men will buy. A throng or market makes his prices high. Men set no value on cheap merchandise. A truth all women know if they are wise. My fifth, my God, forgive us his every sin. I took his love. I took him for love, not money. He had been an Oxford student once, but in our town was boarding with a good friend, Allison. She knew cash secret that I had to give, more than our parish priest did, as I live. I told her my full mind, and I shared it all, for my husband pissed against the wall. For if my husband pissed against the wall, or did a thing that might have cost his life, to her and to another's neighbor, and to my niece, a girl whom I loved well, his every thought I wouldn't blush to tell. And often I told them, be it said, God knows. I made his face turn hot and red for secrets he confided to his shame. He knew he only had himself to blame. And so it happened once that during Lent, as I often did, to Ellison's I went. I'm taking a sip of coffee right now because I've been reading a while, huh? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So she goes to Ellison's. For I have loved my life long to be gay, and to walk out in April or in May, to hear the talk and seek a favorite haunt. Jenkin, the student, Ellis, my confidant, and I myself went into the country. Pardon me. My husband was in London all that Lent. So her fourth husband, obviously, right? I had the greater liberty to see and to be seen by jolly company. How good I could tell beforehand in what place luck would be waiting with a stroke of grace. And so I went every merrymaking. No pilgrimage was past my undertaking. I was at festivals, marriages, processions, preachings, and at miracle plays. And in my scarlet clothes I made a sight. Upon that costume neither moult nor mite, nor any worm with raving hunger fell. And how so? It was kept in use so well. Now, she didn't have any holes in her clothes. Now, for what happened? Well, in the fields we walked, the three of us, in gallantry we talked, the student and I, until I told him if I became a widow, he should marry me. For I can say, not with empty pride, I've never failed for marriage to provide, of other things as well. Let mice be meek, in a mouse's heart I would not be worth a leek. He has one hole to scurry to, just one. And if that hole fails him, he's quite undone. Talking about the mouse. I let the student think that he had bewitched me. Parentheses, my mother with this piece of guile enriched me. So she learned this from her mother. All night I dreamed of him. This too I said. See the hyphen? He was about to kill me flat in bed. My very bed, in fact, was full of blood, but still I hoped it would result in good, for blood betokens gold, as I've heard. It was fiction, of course, this dream and every word, but I was following my mother's lore. In all of this matter, as in many more. Sirs, hyphen, let me see, what did I mean to say? By God, I have it. So when he lay, my fourth, of whom I've spoken, on his bier, I wept, of course, on his bier, his funeral pyre. I showed but little cheer, as wives must do, since custom has its place, and with my kerchief covered upon my face. But since I had provided for a mate, I didn't cry for long. I freely state. So to the church my husband on the morrow was borne away by neighbors in their sorrow. Jenkin, the student, was among the crowd, and when I saw him walk, so help me God, behind the bier, the coffin, I thought he had a pair of legs and feet so cleanly turned and fair that I put my heart completely in his hold. He was in fact 20 winters old, and I was 40. And to confess the truth, but all my life I've still had a colt's tooth. My teeth were spaced apart. That was the seal that Saint Venus printed and became me well. So help me God, I was a lusty one, pretty, young, rich, full of fun. And truly, as my husbands have all said, I was the best thing that there could be in bed. So I belong to Venus in my feelings, the goddess of love, and have the heart of Mars in all my dealings, the warrior god. From Venus come my lust and appetite, and from Mars I get my courage and my might. Born under Taurus, while Mars stood therein. Astrology. We can look that up when we analyze that. Alas, alas, that ever was a love was a sin. I yielded to my every inclination through the predominance of my constellations. This made me so that I never could withhold my chamber of Venus, if the truth be told, from a good fellow. Yet upon my face Mars left his mark, and in another place never, so many Christ grant me intercession, have I yet loved a fellow with discretion. But always I have followed my appetite. Let him long and short, or dark or light. I've never cared, as long as he liked me. What is his rank or how poor he might be? It didn't matter. There's a word, it sounds like there may be a word to describe this woman, but we're going to save that for the analysis. Well, nymphomania, she likes sex. What should I say but when the month ran out that this jolly student, always much about, this Jenkin, married me in solemn state, and to him I gave land and titles and the whole slate of goods that had been given me before, but my repentance afterward was sore. He wouldn't endure the pleasures I held dear. By God, he gave me a lick once on the ear, when from a book of his I tore a leaf, and so hard that from that blow my ear grew deaf. Stubborn I was as a lioness with young, and by truth I had a rattling tongue, and I would visit, and I'd be done before, no matter what foreboding oath he swore. So he used to beat her. Against this habit he would sit and preach me sermons enough, and he would try to teach me old Roman stories, how his whole life this man Ciplius Gallus left his wife, only because he saw her one day bareheaded down the street from his doorway. And another Roman he told me by his name, who since his wife was at a summer's game without his knowledge, thereupon forsook that woman. And in his Bible he would look and find the proverb of Ecclesiastes, where he enjoins and makes the scripture fast that men forbid their wives to rove about. And then he would quote me this, you needn't doubt. Build a foundation over sands and shallows, or gallop a blind horse across the fellows. Let a wife trespass to shrines that some saint hollows. Are you all fit swing upon the gallows? Talk as he would, I didn't care two haws about his proverbs or his stale old saws. Set right by him I never meant to be. I hate men who tell me my faults to me. The more of us that I do by your pleasure, this made him mad beyond all measure. Under his yoke in no case would I go. She's not bending to his will. Now by St. Thomas, I will let you know why from that book I tore this leaf from which I got the blow that made me deaf. He had a book, Valerius, he called it, and Theopolitus, and he always hauled it from where he lay to read both day and night, and laughed hard at it. Such was his delight. There was another scholar too at Rome, a cardinal. His name was St. Jerome. He wrote a book against Jovinian. The book included to Tertullian, Sapricius, Tortilla, forgive my pronunciations, Abbess Halose, who lived near Paris. It contained all three, and it was bound in a single volume, and it made one besides, the Parables of Solomon. Valerius is a renowned ancient Greek philosopher. And Ovid's Art of Love. On such a vacation he would snatch from worldly occupation. He dredged this book for tales of wicked wives. And he knew more stories of their wretched lives than those told of the good women in the Bible. No scholar ever lived who did not libel women, believe me. To speak well of wives, it's quite beyond them, unless it be lives of holy saints. No woman else will do. Who was it that painted the lion? Tell me who. By God, if women only had written stories like wits and scholars in their oratories, they would have pinned on men more wickedness than the whole breed of Adam can redress. Venus's children clash with Mercury's. The two work evermore by contraries. Knowledge and wisdom are of Mercury's giving. Venus loves revelry and riotous living. And with these clashing dispositions gifted, each of them sinks, with the other is uplifted. Thus Mercury falls, God knows, in desolation in Pisces, which is Venus's exaltation. And Venus falls when Mercury is raised. Thus by a scholar no woman can be praised. The scholar, when he's old and cannot do the work of Venus more than his old shoe, and then sits he down, and in his dotage finds writes that no woman keeps her marriage bound. But now for the story that I undertook. All of this is a digression. To tell how I was beaten for the book. Jenkin one night, who never seemed to tire on reading his book, sat by the fire, and first he read of Eve, whose wickedness delivered all mankind to wretchedness, for which in his own person Christ was slain, who in his heart's blood brought us again, right? So there's some footnotes all over here. You can pause me and read them. I will read some of them. By this, he said expressly, you will find that woman was the loss of all mankind. So he's blaming Eve for the loss of all mankind. We're going to talk about this. He read for me next how Samson lost his hair. Sleeping, his mistress clipped it off for fair, and through this betrayal, he lost both his eyes. Victor Mature made a great movie called Samson and Delilah with Hedy Lamarr, a great actress. He then read to me, and I'm not telling lies, that Euryria, the wife of Hercules, caused him to set himself on fire. And with these, he did not overlook the sad to-do of Socrates with his wives. He had two. I don't know if that's true. Okay, Xantippe emptied his piss pot on his head, This good man sat as patient as if dead, and he wiped his scalp. He did not dare complain except to say, with thunder must come rain. So you can read about, it was an ancient Athenian, the wife of Socrates, mother of their 3 sons. She was likely much younger than Socrates. Pasipia, who was the queen of Crete, for wickedness he thought her story sweet. He, who's he? Her husband. Ugh, that's enough. It was a grisly thing. She was the queen of Crete, the daughter of Helios. She's notable as the mother of the Minotaur. Her husband, Minos, failed to sacrifice to the Cretan bull, so he had promised, so Poseidon cursed her to fall in love with the bull. Clemenstra, in her lechery, who took her husband's life feloniously, he grew doubt in reading of her treason. And then he told me, also for what reason, unhappy Amphiaraus lost his wife. My husband had the story of his wife. Amphiaraus, who had a class of gold. These are all examples that he's giving her from this book, from this page that she tore out. They're all of women who were just monsters, it sounds like. The secret of her husband's hiding place, for which Thebes he meant an evil grace. Livia and Lucilla, he went through their tale as well. They killed their husbands too, one killed for love, the other for hate. Livia Drusilla was a Roman empress. It's a great, great story about Augustus. She was the wife of Augustus. And there's a great series on PBS, an old series about that. We'll talk about that in the analysis. One evening, Livia, when the hours were late, poisoned her husband, for she was his foe. Lucilla doted on her husband so that in her lust, hoping to make him think of her, she gave him a love drink of such sort that he died before the morrow. And he told me then how one Latimus, complaining to a friend named Arius, told him that in the garden grew a tree on which his wives had hanged themselves, all 3, merely for spite against their partnership. Brothers, said Arius, let me have a slip from the miraculous tree. For begging your pardon, I want to go and plant that in my garden. And then about how wives in recent times he read how some had murdered their husbands lying abed, and all the night long had let a paramour enjoy them with the corpse flat on the floor, or driven a nail into the husband's brain while he was sleeping, and thus he had been slain, and some had given them poison in their drink. He told more harm than anyone can think, and seasoned his wretched stories with proverbs, outnumbering all of the blades of grass and herbs on earth. Can you imagine being talked to like this? Better a dragon for a mate, better, he said, on a lion's whims to wait, than of a wife whose way it is to chide. Better high in the loft bide, than in the railing wife down in the house. They are no contrarious. They hate their husbands like, so he would say. A woman, he said, throws her shame away when she takes off her smock. And on he'd go. A pretty woman, unless she's chaste also, is like a gold ring stuck in a sow's nose. What? I put some question marks here. Who could imagine, half suppose the gall that my heart drank. The gall that my heart drank. Gall. You know what gall is? Read about gall. It's what Christ was given when he was thirsty. One of the Romans gave him gall, vinegar. Raging at each drop. And when I saw that he would never stop reading all night from his accursed book, suddenly in the middle of it, I took 3 leaves, tore them out in a great pick, and with my fist I caught him on the cheek so hard that he tumbled backward into the fire. And he jumped up. And he was mad for air, and as mad as a lion. He caught me on the head with such a blow that I fell down, as if dead. And seeing me on the floor, how still I lay, he was aghast, and he would have fled away, till I came to at length, and I gave a cry. You killed me for my lands. Before I die, false thief, I said, I'm going to give you the last kiss. He came to me and knelt down close at this, and he said, so help me God, dear Allison, I'll never strike you for this thing I've done. You're to blame. You're to blame. Forgive me, I implore. So then I hit him on the cheek once more, and I said, thus I'm avenged, you thief. I cannot speak, and now I shall die for grief. But finally, with much care and ado, we reconciled our differences, we two. He let me have a bridle in my hand for management of both our house and our land. And to curb his tongue, he also undertook on the spot, I made him burn his book. And when I secured in full degree by a triumph of a whole sovereignty, he said, my dear, my own true wife, do as you will as long as you have life. Preserve your honor and keep my estate. And from that day we settled our debate. I was as kind, God help me, day and dark, as any wife from India to Denmark. And also true, and so he was to me. I pray the Lord who sits in majesty to bless his soul for Christ's own mercy dear. And now I'll tell my tale, if you will hear. Dame, laughed the friar. Comes the friar. As I hope for bliss, this is a long preamble to a tale. God's arms, the summoner said. It's a sin, good people, how friars are always butting in. These two people don't like themselves, as you'll see if you read with Jimmy. A fly in a fire will fall for every dish and every question, whatever people wish. What do you know with all your talk and preambling? Amble or trot or keep still or go scrambling. You interrupt our pleasure. You think so, Sir Summoner, said the flyer. Well, before I go, I'm going to give these people here a chance or two for laugh at summoners, I promise you. Well, curse your face, said the summoner. Curse me if I don't tell some stories 2 or 3 on friars, huh? I'll get to Sittingbourne, with which I'll twist your heart and I'll make it mourn. For you have lost your temper, I can see. Oh, be quiet, said the host. Immediately. And so he ordered, let the woman tell her tale. You guys are acting like people who've drunk too much ale. Do, madam, tell us. That is the best measure. Already, sir, she answered, right? The wife of Bath. It's at your pleasure, with license and with this worthy friar here. Madame, tell on, you have our ear. Wow, you've been reading with Jimmy. And I know you're thinking, wow, that's a long wind-up. Well, it's the longest prologue. But she's got 5 husbands, and now she's going to tell her tale. It's an interesting story. She's definitely a liberated woman in medieval times. We'll study this, we'll analyze it, but in the meantime, thank you for coming and reading with me the prologue to the Wife of Bath's tale, translated by Theodore Morrison. There's lots of other tales, lots of other classic literature on my website. Send me an email, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. I love your emails, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. And remember, questions, use that email, come to the website. We're on YouTube also. Look forward to seeing you soon. And I hope you got something out of this, ladies and gentlemen, because I certainly did. And I only have one wife. And I'll tell you, it's an interesting story. I'm gonna sum this up in my analysis and see what my wife says about it. Take it easy.